Hello everyone. I'm just going to make a short video. Well, maybe not so short. We'll see by the end of this video how long it actually ends up being. But I'm going to do this more often. I'm going to do a bit of a news mini podcast, if you will, on this channel and see if you guys like that. Where I just pull certain articles that I find interesting and want to talk about, that are pertinent to MGTOW discussions. So, with that said, I want to bring up the first article here. And this is an article that surprisingly I found on men's rights Reddit. Maybe they're warming to this idea. And, some MRAs are reluctant to talk about this. Some of them see it as a crazy sci-fi thing that, will never come to pass. And of course, some MRAs, I'm not going to mention who because I'm not interested in drama, but some MRAs, of course, have appearances to keep up, so they won't talk about this kind of thing. But MGTOW, of course, as you guys well know, are a bit of a free-for-all, and we're no longer concerned with, keeping up appearances for women or society at large, so we can discuss these things in kind of a more open forum, if you will. But this is an article titled Fetuses in Artificial Wombs, Medical Marvel or Misogynist Malpractice, and this is from Newsweek. And this will be in the description box if you're interested in reading it, but I'll provide to you a few choice bits. So let's see what we have here. It says, transhumanist journalist and scholar Zoltan Istvan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, wrote on Monday about current concrete developing research in artificial womb technology called ectogenesis. The practice would allow humans to breed without giving birth in perhaps 20 years, Istvan predicts in his motherboard column. The term ectogenesis was coined by British scientist J.B.S. Haldane in 1924, a friend and inspiration of Huxley's, who predicted, and they're referring to Aldous Huxley here, Huxley, who predicted that live human births would make up less than 30% of all births by the year 2074. One of the striking paragraphs here that I really want you guys to focus in on. It says further down, quote, although it holds the potential to be an efficient and occasionally life-saving procedure, ectogenesis has already sparked debate. Is, quote, human still applicable if embryos are not technically bred of a human womb, that is, of a female womb, because of course, all life derives from the goddess womb, the golden uterus and all that. But of course, these would still be humans, genetically speaking. They would absolutely be human, just as human as me or you. And I predict that in the future, when human births start to occur via this method, you're going to see all sorts of attempts at subhumanization, but you can absolutely see in the future a movement, if you will, a Luddite movement dedicated towards persecuting these people that are born through this method. But that's for another video. It says, what about, quote, mother? Istvan notes that the most prevalent philosophical issue driving ectogenesis is that it will shift perceptions of women in society. Will the feminine, they're asking here, will the feminine mystique be lost by such an artificial process, replacing what's long been a mainstay of the female domain? Well, of course it would. And it continues further, and this is really interesting here. It says, quote, this question has caused a rift between leading scientists and feminist scholars because we all know that feminists don't care about accepting the science as it is. They have to put their feminist angle on it. And, scientific research and factual evidence be damned. It says, the question has caused a rift between leading scientists and feminist scholars who state that ectogenesis could, quote, hand over women's sacred birthing ability to science. The sacred divine feminine, you see. Look, feminists understand the power that comes along with the ability to incubate children. And MGTOW also understand that power, and we are intent on using science to take it away from you. Not take it away, but just, extend that power to the male sex. It continues, it says, in her book, The Captured Womb, A History of Medical Care of Pregnant Women, Anne Oakley claims that ectogenesis encourages long-standing misogynistic medical practices appropriating women's wombs for science's sake. Of course, again, feminists here are ignoring science and ignoring factual evidence. We wouldn't be appropriating or taking away any female womb. As a matter of fact, any female would be free to breed in whichever way she saw fit, with whoever she saw fit. We would just extend that ability to the male sex. Simple as that. And of course, the classic and default accusation of misogyny whenever men are concerned with gaining reproductive power in any way. So a feminist, of course, they want this ability to control men via the reproductive act or the reproductive incubation period. And so they're, understandably scared of men gaining this ability. And it continues to say, and by the way, this is an important part as well. And this is what I call the gynocentric double whammy. And all too often we see, despite traditionalist conservatives saying that, they're anti-feminist and they're for men and this and that, we see them all too often become very strange bedfellows when it comes to inhibiting the rights of men and inhibiting the sovereignty of men and the ability of men to do whatever it is they please with their lives, so long as they're not hurting anybody else. But the article continues and says, ectogenesis is problematic for the socially conservative and religious too. Journalist and Green Mountain College professor John Nasivera wrote in America, the National Catholic Review, that depriving a growing fetus from the intimacy of its mother's body is a very serious thing, end quote. Well, he doesn't go into detail about what exactly makes it a very serious thing, but of course we're going to see an appeal to the sanctity of motherhood, and then we're going to hear all sorts of appeals to biology and saying, well, if we don't have the right ratio of amniotic fluid and the unique environment that the womb provides to the growing fetus, then this could cause damage. And that's a fair point, but all of scientific history has been, in terms of medicine and experimenting with medicine in terms of how we react to a medical procedure or a medication or what have you, always comes with a risk. And of course, theoretically speaking, the correct mixture of amniotic fluid or whatever other environmental factors are unique to the mother's womb can absolutely 100% be reproduced in an artificial womb via the process of ectogenesis. Is simply a matter of determining what combinations of chemical components make up the amniotic soup, if you will. And it says, yet supporters claim ectogenesis will be beneficial to both science and humanity, making childbirth safer for mothers as well as fetuses. Women unable to procreate, infertile couples, and same-sex couples needing a surrogate could have the children with ectogenesis. Notice that just like with surrogacy, they leave out heterosexual men that don't want to have birth or have children through a woman that essentially changes you to a female for the next 18 years at the very least, and opens you up to all sorts of child support, racketeering, and so on and so forth. So of course this is going to be something that feminists resist and are against. But at the same time, with all this talk about the divine feminine and how this is going to take away the sacred, right that women have to their wombs from them, when it's actually not, and when it's actually going to continue to allow women to have birth in whatever way they choose, you will not hear anybody talking about how sperm banks take away the divine masculine and the divine ability for men to inseminate women. You will not hear this because, of course, gynocentrism revolves around the golden uterus. Gynocentrism revolves around the female's ability to incubate life, human life. And, there was a nice little comment section on Reddit. I actually found this link via Reddit on the Men's Right Reddit. And I think it's a great thing that men are starting to take notice of these things, and they're starting to really call out feminists on ectogenesis and the artificial womb and the possibility of an artificial womb. Very interesting times, gentlemen. The future is ours. And if you want to check out that Reddit conversation, I'll read some of the choice bits from that as well. There are various men saying, well, here's one comment, How Twosome, I believe, is his name. He said, quote, that's exactly how I feel. I love kids, and I would love to be a father someday. I think he left out the word love there. But the risks that come with marriage just seem too great. I feel like adoption is the only sensible option. Then there's another comment. Step 1, donate and freeze sperm. Step 2, buy access to artificial womb. Step 3, have vasectomy. Step 4, pork to your heart's content. Step 5, have your kid on your own terms without having to be bled dry. or more likely, the technology will just be banned for anything other than supporting a female-led pregnancy on the grounds of, quote, preserving the family unit. This is excellent that men are starting to talk this way. This is excellent that men are starting to understand how traditionalism and feminism synergistically work to inhibit the sovereignty and freedom of men. And then it continues, another commenter, Casso Thema, says, step 6, have judge throw out your, quote, terms. Step 7, have judge take possession of the remainder of your frozen sperm. Step 8, have judge order you to pay child support for every child produced from your once frozen sperm. Step 9, feminists discover the artificial wombs can't pay child support. Ruled unconstitutional by matriarch-run patriarchal SCOTUS. So, of course, you know, the cynical side here of course, feminists are going to attack this technology when it becomes available. They're going to try to restrict it, and they're going to try to restrict men from it, and they're going to try to still figure out ways to extract male wealth from men. Here's a good one from Design Rod, I believe. It's far away, I can't really read it well, but it says, you will see the homeless rate even out as men no longer have to trade resources to gain access to a woman's reproductive ability, end quote. So, again, I'm very happy that men are starting to talk this way. It's very encouraging, and of course, this is a taboo subject, and I'm more than happy to take the ridicule that comes along with talking about these subjects, because frankly, I just don't care. I'm not in here for a popularity contest. I'm going to talk about things that empower men and things, and I take this subject very seriously, even if it is 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades away. I am a tactician, and I understand that there is a war being declared on men, and I understand that in order for men to stop that war, and we're not talking about a violent war, we're not talking about a war where people show up with guns and shoot each other. This is a cultural war, this is a social war, this is a gender war. Absolutely it is. And so, you know, we have to understand that we are in this war, and men are being targeted, and as a military tactician, I am interested in developing technologies that liberate men from women. So the birth control pill, of course, as soon as we get that, the better. Artificial reproductive technology, of course, as soon as we get that, the better. That's, of course, on a long-term scale, but it's coming. I assure you it is. Here's another interesting comment. This is from The Rabid. And it says, my thinking is that although men will be able to have babies via this technology, men are still seen as substandard children caregivers. For example, my understanding is that it's quite difficult for gay people to adopt. Given that men and gays could potentially be seen as substandard parents, they could be banned from this technology. And, you know, that's a fair point. Of course, we operate in this society and gynocentric society under the presumption of motherhood, that women are, for whatever reason, better in terms of being capable of raising offspring, when in reality, I think that it's the masculine role, the fatherly role, that transmits the most wisdom and the most lessons, life lessons, important life lessons to their offspring, lessons that essentially instruct their children and their offspring, the fathers of these children and offspring. These lessons instruct these children on how to live life, right? And you can gauge a person's worth sometimes, or, well, I'm not going to say worth, but a person's savvy and intelligence in terms of negotiating the pitfalls of life based on the role that their father played on the upbringing of that child. So, of course, fathers transmit wisdom to offspring at a much higher rate than women, and that's one of the reasons that feminists are so intent on separating men from their offspring, you know, via child support, via alimony and all that. That's one of the most important things that you need to remember, that the feminists and their ilk are intent on separating the transmission of wisdom from the older generation of men to the younger generation of men or boys, and even, you know, girls. So again, very encouraging that men are starting to talk this way. Now, the next article that I want to talk about is from The Guardian, and this is also going to be in the description box. Now, the title of this article is called, quote, Domestic Violence Refuge Provision at Crisis Point Warn Charities. Now, let me just read a little bit from it here. It says, quote, domestic violence refuges are being closed across the country in a crisis that is putting support for the most vulnerable women and children back 40 years, leading charities have warned. Specialist safe houses for women and children, which were forged out of the feminist movement in the 1970s, are being forced to shut by some local authorities because they do not take in male victims. Excellent. Excellent, gentlemen. Excellent. Now, this is one of the reasons that I say that we need to facilitate a multi-pronged approach in which we attack feminism from every political angle that we possibly can. And this is where I disagree with the anarcho-capitalist libertarians who insist that we do not pursue domestic violence shelters for men. This is how we attack feminism and at the same time acquire necessary services for men that are suffering from domestic violence. And no, you can't just tell men to man up, and you can't just tell men to learn game and learn how to, control his women or whatever. Some men are abused by women. Some men are victims of domestic violence, and I think that we should, as a society, extend our services to them. And in doing so, and Razorblade Candy has talked about this at length, in doing so, we also make it so that we deprive feminists of a weapon that is wielded against men, the domestic violence industry. We deprive them of access to that just a little bit every time we demand that domestic violence shelters extend their services to men. And then it says key concerns raised by women's groups include the breakdown of the national network of refuges through local authorities imposing limits on the numbers of non-local women able to stay in them. A second point, time limits on length of stay. And this is the critical point here. Funding cuts because refuges do not take men. So again, this flies straight in the face, contrary to the notion that we hear parroted in specifically conservative men's rights circles, that men cannot access, get the government to provide access to domestic violence services for men. That is a futile cause. It makes no sense. That we'll never get it. No, in fact, we can get it, and this is a perfect example of that. And it says, and it continues to say, the change in focus has been devastating for the Haven in Coventry, a charity which has run the city's women's refugees for 43 years, but is fighting for its survival after its service was decommissioned by the council in favor of self-contained accommodation units and new accommodation for male victims. That's right, gentlemen. That's right. Show feminists, show women that support feminism, and show women in general, and show the world in general, that if you do not extend these services to men, then you are going to have to pay with the closure of your organization. Attack them from multiple points. And you know what? The libertarians can go limit government all they want. Cut their funding if you want. Do that via the political process. But don't tell us that it can't work, because obviously it's being implemented right here and now. Here's the evidence. And it says the Wolverhampton Haven, which has run the refuges for 41 years, is having its funding from the city cut by £300,000, and as it struggles to maintain services, has been forced to reserve some of its places for men, even though it has had no male referrals to the accommodation so far. Now, this is an important point, and I want to speak on this for a second here. Men, of course, there is the stigma. There is the worldwide stigma that a man that suffers from domestic violence abuse is not a man, right? And this is the first step in deconstructing that stigma, right? Of course, the opponents of this, the anarcho-capitalists and libertarians and even the feminists, are going to say, well, no men are showing up for this. Well, Earl Silverman showed up for it, and he was denied. And what happened to Earl Silverman? No, we have to fight the stigma so that men can feel comfortable escaping domestically violent situations. We have to make it comfortable for men. We have to work as men to change the minds of men to accept that absolutely women are violent, can be violent, and have been violent towards men, and that there is no legal recourse or social service in place that is designed to assist men undergoing this process of violence and dehumanization that is having a domestically violent partner, a domestically violent female partner. And it says, the country was in danger of, quote, returning to the days of Kathy come home, Horley said, referring to the BBC TV play that triggered public outrage at homelessness in the mid-1960s. Well, if we want to talk about homelessness, why isn't public outrage triggered when the vast majority of your population, not only in America but in the UK as well, men, and pretty much everywhere in the Western world, and perhaps, I don't know the statistics, but perhaps throughout the entire world. And it says, quote, "Without adequate refuge provision, women experiencing domestic violence will be faced with a stark choice. Flee to live rough on the streets, or remain with their abuser and risk further violence, or even worse." Men deal with that choice every single day. And that's why the majority, again, of your population, of your homeless population, is comprised of the male sex. So it's okay to have men confronting that choice on a daily basis. But it's not okay to have women. We can bring this to society and start saying that we demand equal treatment under the law or shut the shelters down. Period. Okay, gentlemen, so that's all I really have to say for now. I hope you guys like this news portion of my channel. And if you want more, feel free to state that in the comment section. Some videos in the works coming soon. Look out for those, and thanks for listening.